who is now in prison for having Mandingo parties in Hollywood. And it was due to an African-American citizen of Los Angeles, a journalist who kept out the pressure to finally throw him in jail. His name's Buck. It's not his real name. I forgot his first name. But if you look at Buck, black males died in his West Hollywood apartment, which, by the way, West Hollywood is also where Andre Harrell died. And for those of you who don't know, West Hollywood is gay central. This is like the West Village of New York, or the Castro Street in San Francisco. In London, what would it be? Notting Hill?
I'm just astounded by what this Ed Buck did.
Oh, yeah. You're reading about that? Yeah, Ed Buck.
Yeah.
That's not his name. He's actually a Hazarian, like Clive Davis. And I'm sure Davis...
He was injecting them with substances in exchange for carnal activity, which led to overdoses, and he got 30 years.
Yes.
And he was a wealthy donor?
To the Democratic Party. And he was close to Adam Schiff, who's a prominent congressman here in the U.S. Shifty Schiff.
Not only did 2 die, there were multiple other ODs.
Yes. And they were black men. That article probably doesn't say that.
Buck used his money and privilege to exploit the wealth and power imbalances between himself and his victims, who were unhoused, destitute, and or struggling with addiction. He spent thousands of dollars on substances and party and play sessions that destroyed lives and bred insidious addictions. All
Remember,
3 men were black.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says 2 died, a 3rd man overdosed. All 3 men were black.
Yes.
Wow. He was nicknamed Dr. Kevorkian. He had at least 10. Who had at least 10 victims, and would give them the substances while they were unconscious.
Yes.
One victim was unable to move after he gave him a tranquilizer. And then when Buck wanted him to leave his home, Buck became frustrated and obtained a power saw from the closet, turned it on, and approached the victim with it. Oh my God. He viewed human beings as playthings, destroying their lives merely to appease his own carnal gratification. Oof. Never heard of this guy. This is one sicko, Professor.
Well, this information was suppressed because it was real. It was so real. And with stories like this makes Harvey Weinstein look like an angel by comparison. If I was on his defense team, I would put that out in the news firmament to condition the environment out of which his jury pool is going to be brought to bear in this decision here, right? But the deal is, he was a Democratic Party insider, both locally and on the national level. And who was he serving? I think it was a foreign entity. Who was he serving as a pass-through to get the money in the right hands, right? So you immediately say that the racial politics of the Sean Combs case, and J-Lo, who's Puerto Rican, after all, there's a racial dimension there as well, is being paved over, even while people like Reverend Al Sharpton are trying to boycott a major retail chain here called Target, boycott them for not hewing to the DEI anymore, according to the government mandates. Right? So they're extorting these so-called putative leaders who, by the way, this is also part of my contribution today. There you go, Reverend Al Sharpton. Right? But behind him is something called the Black Boule, who was exposed by a community intellectual by the name of Stephen Cogley. And it's these individuals who are responsible for the creation, the management, and the maintenance and advancement of people like Sean Combs. All right. Sean Combs is not a standalone. He's not a one-off. He's a representative of a systemic evil that goes back to colonial times, if not earlier. Another fraternity, one of your viewers said, exactly. Literally, it's one of the Greek organizations. Kamala Harris belonged to the sorority out of Howard University in DC, Alpha Kappa Alpha. It's these secret societies amongst the black bourgeoisie, like the Boule, that run other Negroes. The whole NAACP was started by 10 high yellow, that is mostly white, with a little bit of black blood in them, to organize themselves, give themselves up to the establishment, the banking establishment, to control the rest of the black population. Now, the good news is the black population in general, thanks to shows like yours and other black intellectuals in the community, like Stephen Cogley, are getting and thanks to, ironically, YouTube and social media, the word is getting, it used to be a secret. It used to be a dark secret of these different trajectories, these secret societies, these historically black colleges and universities like Howard, like Spelman. And Spelman, by the way, Laura Spelman was a Rockefeller, right? So a deal was struck in order to create hip hop and rap in a certain direction to keep the black masses down. Because if there's one thing that the masters are afraid of, that's a slave rebellion, right? And the largest slave rebellion since the time of Spartacus took place in San Domingo by Toussaint Louverture, right? The great black Jacobin, as it's been called, because he was making revolution and freed his people in Haiti around the time of the French Revolution. So within the racial and the political consciousness of the ruling class, the fear of a black planet, this is a Public Enemy record, if you might recall, the fear of a black genetic biological overrun of the rest of the world runs pretty deep, very, very deep. And a prominent director by the name of Jordan Peele did a film called Get Out. This is highly recommended, that talks about the fetishization of the black body, the African body, and the parting out of it for organs and transplants for people with diseased organs, and getting into African genetics in order to improve or to maintain or to advance the physicality of the master group. This is called Get Out. It's put in the context of a fantasy horror film, but it really strikes at the heart of the deeper social historical horror of this relationship we're seeing play out right now. This is the deep source of the anxiety, Mr. Atwood.
Professor, you've come out the gate really strong. I'm mesmerized. We've got almost 1,000 people watching live, and let
Excellent.
me just you catch your breath while I do a quick poll. So put a 1 in the chat if you've already subscribed to Professor Hamamoto's YouTube channel. Put a 2 in the chat if you have not and you're about to subscribe with the link I am putting in the live chat right now, or if you're watching in replay, in the description box. And put a 3 in the chat if Professor Hamamoto can bog off and you're never going to subscribe. So we've got lots of ones, a couple of twos. It's all appreciated, folks. The more we bribe the professor with our subscribers, the more likely he will come back and bedazzle us with his knowledge.
Yeah, otherwise I might go into trial consulting. It's a lucrative field. I have colleagues who so she sold a multi-million-dollar business and we were in the same state of poverty.
the way you
She's up
wove
there. I'm
all
still
of
down
those,
here. Pardon me?
the way you wove all of those news stories that I confronted you with
Yes.
into into the historical roots of everything.
Oh,
Mesmerizing,
absolutely.
mesmerizing,
Well, hip
mesmerizing.
hop and rap is the music of the people, but the deal is that all these so-called music critics and Rolling Stone, the globalist rag, New York Times, or the ones in academia are the worst. They're missing the plot totally because you know what? They don't understand the metaphysics of it. They're all atheists anyway, right? They're highly secularized in the sense that if it's not something that they can see and touch and smell empirically, then it doesn't exist for them. That's their own little bias, right? But we're talking about corporations that are in tune with it. They know exactly what's going on. One of the founding fathers of CBS Corporation and CBS Records, which later was acquired by Sony in 1988, that's a Sony CBS brand, was Dr. Frank Stanton. He joined CBS in 1935 with a PhD from Oregon State University, and he studied the behavioral science, advertising, mass persuasion, and how he was going to use the new medium of radio and then television in order to capture the audience's imagination. And the CBS record division was an integral part of that later on, especially when network television revenues begin to drop off, right? And we all know that Clive Davis was fired in 1973 from CBS Records. But it all comes from depth psychology, the manufacture of anxiety. Oh, I have body odor, or I'm not pretty enough. I need a shave. I need to eat bananas for breakfast. This all comes from the fertile imagination of Siggy Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays. All your audience knows this. Well, guess who consulted with the leadership of CBS Network when they were called on the carpet by the U.S. Congress for monopolistic trade practices and creating antisocial culture and really debased entertainment? One Edward Bernays. He was there consulting. If you want to read more about that, this book is old, but I pulled it off my shelves. This is the story about William Paley. The CBS Networks talks all about the Bernays connection.
Have we got that one in the bibliography, Professor?
It is not. No, I name check so many authors I can't keep up with that. I'll put it in my X account and tie it to Amazon. I'll do that.
If you could email me the link or something, the title, that'd be great.
Okay, but it gives you the whole grounding in the behavioral sciences of all of this. Now, I'm saying this because most of the material that I'm looking at just deals with celebrity. You're just scratching the surface, people. And that's exactly what the mind controllers want. They want you to go for the bling so that you can't hear the ring. Hey, that rhymes. Write that one down. Okay, now this is for you junkies who are interested in Margaret Cameron, L. Ron Hubbard. I think he ran off with her at some point, and Jack Parsons, the Caltech genius, the person who sort of pioneered the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Most of your viewers know that story. Well, Margaret Cameron, I'm reading as well. Where's the book? I'll put it in my X account for the bibliography. Margaret Cameron event, according to this book, it's called Sex Magicians, and it's about the lives and spiritual sex magic of a number of figures that you will immediately recognize: Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, Marjorie Cameron, Anton LaVey, and other people. But the point that caught my attention in prepping for this particular talk is that Marjorie Cameron also practiced these Mandingo sex rituals. She had in her little group called the Brotherhood or the Childhood, I think it's called, or the Children. I'll have to go back and look at it. I think it's called the Children. You're out in the desert, out near Palm Springs. Most of you know Palm Springs from the Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra, a lot of celebrities from LA would go down there on the weekends. Palm Springs. She lived out in that area, a rural area called Beaumont, kind of the high desert area. It's a remote area, but she'd have these sex. That's Aleister Crowley, of course. She'd have these sex magic rituals a la Aleister Crowley out in the desert, and she'd pair up white women with black men. Right? That's the checkerboard phenomenon. And through these sex couplings, they would produce a moon child, a Babylon rising. That's perfect Aleister Crowley. That's Marjorie Cameron. The ex-wife of Jack Parsons, who blew himself up or who was blown up. And she was in the same circles as the filmmaker, the avant-garde filmmaker, and gadfly Kenneth Anger. This is all part of the same milieu. And one of the guests of Marjorie Cameron out there in the desert was none other than Gerald Gardner. Does that ring a bell? Am I getting this right? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Gerald Hurd. Not Gerald Gardner. That's a big difference. He was a British writer, and at the time he was working with Aldous Huxley. Huxley had moved to New Mexico for a while en route to LA, where he was hired by the studios to look over scripts and do some writing to put in some New World Order theater into Hollywood Anglo-American film productions. So she was part, that's Marjorie Cameron herself right there, who later went off her rocker. She moved back to West Hollywood. This is all part of that. This is the LA of Buck, of Adam Schiff, of Harvey Weinstein, all of them. A lot of these people lived up in the Pacific Palisades. They lived in Pasadena. That's a younger Aldous Huxley. Pasadena, Altadena, which is where the Caltech is situated, and the JPL. That's also where Murray Gell-Mann had his institutional home, the physicist, the Nobel Prize laureate in physics, I think 1969, Murray Gell-Mann. All these characters came together. No wonder we're seeing all this ugliness pour out of the portal. They come crawling out of these fissures in the landscape. They're coming out in droves in 2025. And thanks to independent scholars and reporters and researchers, people like yourself. I was reading your book on Jimi Savile. It's right here behind me. Somebody.
Thank you.
And knowledge base has grown astronomically. The secret's out.
Should we sneak in some questions, Professor, or are you still on a roll?
Want some challenging questions?
Please put challenging questions in the chat. Ripple wants to know, have you heard of the Idaho 4 Greek fraternities?
I have not, but I will check into it. The Greek, so-called Greek societies are often behind a lot of these inexplicable crimes, these missing persons situations. But yes.
Uber wants to know, with a behavior analyzing skill set, could he get a job as a trial consultant?
In my personal opinion, if you have a graduate degree, PhD level, I think you'd have a good shot at it. I don't know how old you are or what your experience is, but I think those are the men. If you've been in academia, if you're like a sort of a retread from the university, that they like those people because they know how to think analytically. Yeah.
Was Manson a CIA asset?
According to the book Chaos, he was definitely controlled. He was not an organic criminal as we were led to believe initially.
Yeah, I believe that him and the family were an MK Ultra experiment, whereby they didn't just put them on the rainbow drug, they put them on the drug that makes you go fast, because they knew from the laboratories that when they did that with the rats and put them on both of those drugs, the rats started to cannibalize each other, gang R-word each other, and just cause utter mayhem. And by doing that, they were able to dispel the myth of the peaceful hippie and the flower power and the anti-war movement. And there was various other motivations. But if you look at Manson's arrest history,